on the road to Alice Springs, it was insane. They were everywhere.
Oh, yeah.
We were the youngest people there, by the way.
Yeah, there you go. Look at your cat. Aww.
She's cute. Now she's getting frisky. She realises it's playtime.
Cute.
She used to fit in my hand. She was that little, and she would sleep on my desk. And you know those little square boxes of tissues?
Yeah.
She used to get inside the box and sleep inside the box.
Oh,
so cute.
It's crazy, isn't it, how quick they grow?
Oh, it's sad.
I know my old dog, we had a Staffy for about 15 years. She's gone now, but when we first brought her home, I used to carry her around in one of my husband's moccasins. Oh. And to think that a Staffordshire Bull Terrier used to fit in a moccasin just doesn't seem right. It ended up huge. No, She was massive, about 28 kilos in the end.
God. Yeah, well, our cat's probably still a kitten. She's maybe about 6 months old. So she's behind the computer playing with the cords. She'll either get electrocuted or we'll get cut off.
Hopefully we just get cut off.
Yeah. I think she's all right. She's pretty cute, though.
Yeah, she is cute.
And then when people leave the house, she cries. It's like, oh, my God, I've got to go cuddle the cat.
Yeah, I know the feeling. Yeah, I got home and my husband's either let the dog back in and he goes, oh, she was cold. And I'm like, oh, you're just as soft as I am. She's like a greyhound cross, so she does feel the cold.
Yeah, well, I live in Brunswick and it's kind of like the fashion pet here, the greyhound.
Yeah,
and they're all they dress them up in their, kooky Where's Wally outfits and walk them, because they're really good apartment dogs apparently, and they, there's lots of apartments around here.
Oh, super lazy. Like you'd think they'd be flat out, but like she'll run for 30 kilometers or she'll just sleep for 30 hours. Like it's, whatever you feel like doing.
Yeah.
So easy.
Whatever. She's relaxed.
Oh, so just
good.
Beautifully natured, just wonderful animal.
So do you have a pet?
No, I don't have any pet now. I've got just 2 kids. That's enough for me.
They're like pets.
They're worse. Well.
How old are they?
10. The oldest one, 10 years old and 4 years old.
Oh, wow. I had someone say to me once when I was in my 20s that kids were fun while they were the size of dogs. And then when they got bigger than a dog, they became hard work.
Yeah.
Probably that right.
Yeah. Did you put a holiday destination in, Sayed? Can you see the polls?
No, I just my app is a little bit weird. Sometimes the what we call PowerPoints come through, sometimes it disappear. Just I'm trying to open the Chrome again and just open the meeting with the Chrome, just playing with the software and just continue web browser.
Have a look in the chat when you come in, because the polls are sitting there as well.
Is that where they are for you, Suze, in the chat?
They were popping up on the screen, but then I can access the ones I missed through the chat.
Oh, good.
I've also got like a little polls button, which I haven't seen before.
Yeah, well, this is a new feature for Teams, so it's a webinar. So you can either go you go new meeting. Yeah. If you click that down arrow, you can go new meeting or new webinar. And so I set this up as a webinar, and it's our first time using it, and I think it's going okay. And I like the polls. So I think did you come last year?
Yes, but the polls, obviously were not coming through that way.
Yeah, well, we had Menti, and I think this is better than Menti. Menti was a bit buggy.
Oh, was it? I know I've used Zoom before, but Teams I love Teams now. Now I'm used to it.
Yeah, I think it's like industry standard almost.
Yeah, it's so good. It's just amazing, all the functionality it's got now. I don't even make meetings or anything through Outlook anymore. I do everything through here. Yeah,
I actually I do consulting for several different companies, and I'm a member of all their teams, and it's just so easy to flick in and out of the different companies. What are they called? Environments. So just log out of this one and log into, you know, whatever I'm working for at the time, and it switches me around, like, and all the stuff from the other company just comes through. It's so neat and simple.
Yeah. If you save things, like we use it for a lot of our team storage, obviously, and we have other channels that we sort of access different departments and everything, and it's really good. You just, you know, flick access on and off, and you know, read, writes, just and links. Everything's linked now. There's no duplicates of all these different documents flying around. It's I love it.
The latest copy is always there, which is what I love as well. Yeah. And so I work for the surveying task force. It's one of my jobs, promoting surveying, and I submitted a report Monday, so it looks like I'm super duper because it's a week before the meeting, but I'm going to go in and update the report, and nobody will know apart from George, because I've just told him now, because you know, you can, and they'll always have the latest copy.
It's brilliant for that, definitely. Version control, love it.
I love it. Hi Gabby. Hi John.
Good morning, Kelly. Good morning. I can't see John. Anybody else?
Morning.
John, you haven't got your veggie garden in the background. What's going on?
No. I've had some things have gone well, others not so well. I mean, that cold snap around the start of June didn't help things like the broad beans. They were stunted for a while, and recently I've actually been having problems with earwigs. Earwigs have been really bad this year, or recently, among the spuds and the broccoli and the cauliflower. But
rotten buggers.
Other things, I've been getting good crops of silver beet, and what else at the moment? Carrots are going well. Had really good crops of beans. In fact, I got sick of climbing up the ladder for the beans, so I'm not able to share, fortunately. But what I did was, for the two main lots of beans, I had wire mesh going up about 5 foot and then horizontally for the rest of the way, or just at a slight angle, so that way I didn't need the ladder for the beans. So I had climbing beans going up about 4.5 meters equivalent. So getting pretty good crops of those.
Jeez.
So everyone, if you the supermarkets bottom out, we know where to go for our fresh produce.
Not all. I don't grow everything. I don't grow things like peas or sweet corn, but certainly like beans are going well. Tomatoes went well earlier in the year, and capsicums, and I had a good crop of raspberries over summer, and good crop of garlic as well.
I've never done a good crop of tomatoes. The last crop I did, they had like a black spot, like a big black spot, and all of them like a burn mark, but like a 10-cent piece kind of thing. And I was like, yeah, I'm done. You kind of got to stay in your lane, I reckon.
I found once you've been growing tomatoes for a while, I found it probably up maybe a third to a half of my tomatoes will end up being self-sown.
Mine's the same. And then I had so many green ones left over, so I made pickles, and that was delicious.
You know,
never made them.
You know, a relative of mine gave me some pickled green tomatoes, and she said to put them on schnitzel, chicken schnitzel.
Oh yeah.
They were delicious.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah. So if you've got some
cheese, toast and cheese, that's all you need. With your green tomato pickles.
I had some really good success with some chilies, and there's one particular chili you may have heard of, the Californian Reaper.
Oh yeah. Yes.
And I had a whole bunch of these, and I had a young chap who came and visited us, and he goes, "Oh, chili," and he grabbed one, and I said, "Careful with that." Well, he wasn't, and he was suffering for a long time.
Oh my God! It sounds awful.
And here's a couple of oranges as well. I had a lot of oranges drop off over summer when it was hot and dry, but I reckon all up now I'll be picking over 20, maybe up to 2 dozen.
Really?
Yeah.
What about limes? Have you got limes?
No, the fruit trees, I've got a pair of apple trees, an apricot tree, the orange and a lemon.
Kelly, I managed to bottle 10 bottles of lime. What do you call it? Lemon curd, but made with limes. Lime curd, if you like. And about 15 bottles of lime marmalade. So lots of limes over here.
I've got a lemon tree, but my lemons won't ripen properly. I've got to sort of pick them and stick them in the windowsill, and some will ripen. They taste okay and everything, but they just keep. Someone said it's not a lime tree, is it? And I'm like, no, it is a lemon tree, but they just won't ripen.
I just go pick my neighbours. You've got to buy a house where there's people who have got that stuff already happening.
Yeah.
Like Mornington.
So we're getting a few people on now, and I just thought I should mention to you guys that I'm just running some practice polls on the. I think you'll find them in the chat. So if you could kind of just, I was actually interested really in favourite holiday destinations. It's my personal one that I'm, planning a holiday. So I want to know best places to go. So feel free to fill that one out if you wouldn't mind. And I'm curious as to who is here for the first time in A-SPEC. So because we were looking at our stats last night, and all up in 2020, when we ran our first forum of 6 webinars plus a showcase, we had a total of 421 registrations, and we're already up to over 620 with this one. And so it's gaining a lot of momentum. So I'm curious to see who is here for the first time, and I can see some familiar names there already, which is great to see. So hi, Milos. We seem to cross paths a lot. And Ross Johnson, how are you going? So feel free to turn your cameras on so we can see you and say hello, and check out those polls on the right, so that, because we're going to run other polls.
I'm going to join George.
Well, put your demon's hat on then, Milos.
No, I'm putting my generic team's hat on.
Yeah, it's
Morning.
It can't be that cold. Where are you guys in the North Pole?
Our ducted heating had a little sad sack moment last week.
Sort that out.
Oh, when I went for my morning walk along the Bay Trail here at Dramana this morning after brekkie, it was a pretty icy wind. In fact, over winter, some days it's been so cold in the morning I've been wearing my freezer suit for the morning walk.
Jeez.
Jesus.
Yeah. Well. Anyway, so yeah. So check out those. If you can't see the polls, let me know, because I need to kind of know that.
Kellee, I can't see the poll.
Really? But you can't, Gaby, you're the tech guy. So it's in the chat. Can you go into the chat and have a look?
Yeah, it's actually under the polls option. If you look at the list of options at the top right, there's one called polls. So click on that. We use Teams for work.
Not available for me as a guest.
Oh.
Really? But hang on. Which did you log in under? What's your email, Gaby?
I've just come in as a guest this time. That's what we said we would try and do, because that worked the last time we tested.
Kim can see them.
Kim can see them.
I can see them.
I can see him. Morning, Gaby.
Yeah, I can see him, yeah.
And you guys are all guests, right? So I think Gaby
He's just special.
is special.
Gaby, log out and
I'll do that.
Yeah.
I can't see the polls. I'm moving.
Yeah. It might depend on the browser as well, using.
It could be your, because when you open it, if you're opening in the desktop instead of the browser, you open it in the desktop or the browser?
Yeah, I use the desktop one.
Yeah, the desktop will work. The browser might be a bit different.
I has limitations, yeah.
They're not the same. Not totally the same. So it could be dependent on how your tenancy's set up. So if you go through the browser, it should be all right. No, sorry, the desktop.
Interesting.
No, that's right. Same brand, different product.
So Gaby, I've just made you a co-organizer. So hopefully you know, under both of your emails. All right, cool. So, well, I guess if you can see the polls, that's fantastic. And if you could fill them out, that'd be really cool. Oh, so Kim's using the browser. She said she hit the chat button and she could see the polls from the browser. So try that. Paris, nice. Scottish Highlands. Who's been there?
Sounds cold.
Yeah. Yeah, I've never been.
Need more than the beanie.
10 degrees in summer. Give it a miss.
Oh, no thanks.
So it looks like, can you guys see the results of the polls? It looks like that most of us are still working from home.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, we're up to 10 responses. So yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's good.
And George, are you wearing tracksuit pants?
Do you really want to know?
No, I don't.
Maybe I've got my charmy bottoms on.
Maybe.
You know, I've got the weatherman or the newsreader outfit on, shirt and tie above the desk. Exactly.
Yeah. Stay seated if you wouldn't mind.
Are you recording this today as well?
We are.
This is
Okay,
all
thanks.
recorded.
So you went in summer, you know.
For sure.
Oh, yeah, I've had a look at just a little bit unrelated. I had a look at the Victorian Digital Twin website now that it's online, and I guess for those here from Victoria, they may find it pretty interesting as there's a bit of a 3D or building 3D aerial photography in some councils.
Reality mesh.
Yeah, pretty
So
impressive.
what you do is you go there at 8 p.m. to Ballarat Main Street, and you see if the shops have all closed up, and then that'll tell you how much reality there is.
And what about?
It's very interesting. It's a good next gen SDI. They're still looking for for it to be a twin. It needs to do something beyond just throw us a bit of data. But it's a good foundation. It's
a good foundation. And my question is, with all these digital twin information, what are we doing about standards around digital twin? Like,
there is a SSSI have a couple of standards streams going on at the moment. So there's one looking at standards specifically, sort of more broadly. That's chugging along. And there was another one run by Marie. Do you know Marie Truelove from CSIRO? I was working with her on framework for digital twins. Sort of my problem with twins more generally is it's like the wide open plain, you know, room for everyone.
I mean, do we need A-SPEC for digital twins? Yeah, to answer it. I'm just throwing that out there. Like, is this another thing for that needs to happen?
Currently, look, and this is just my point of view. There's way too much focus on tech. Way too much focus. You know, everyone's taken their standard sort of GISE whatever integrator, and they've put digital twin in front of it, like what people used to do with E. You know, E everything. There's a need around standards for digital twins in terms of capability, not in terms of tech. So, you know, there was a discussion around, should GIS be the interface for digital twins? And my response to that was absolutely not. Absolutely want the capability in a digital twin to bring GIS information and functionality in, not necessarily want the interface though. So it's about, it's more an integrator standards thing than a technology standards. So what set of capabilities does and it really got to get down to that. The framework we had, this is going off topic here, the framework we had started to sort of talk about, you know, like in nature, trophic levels. In other words, you can't have eagles without grass. Yeah, grass gives the mouse gives the the rabbits or whatever, and up you go through and this concept of a network of capabilities, and it needs to answer a question.
Mm.
They are the standard. One of the other streams of standards there is we'll probably have lots of them. How do we bring them together? How do we get them to talk to each other? Because you're not going to have one twin to rule them all. That's just a lot of rubbish. That's just marketing nonsense. You know.
So maybe this is more of a user group forum type discussion where we kind of those who understand standards and the use and data governance really well could have that discussion around what it would look like or what it should look like, you know.
From a data perspective, from a purely data perspective, what it will drive, because currently the way all the various versions of the digital twins of Australia, from National Map, which is the same cesium globe as the one in Queensland and one in New South Wales, and now the one in Victoria, and I think they're looking at WA. So that's going to become the foundation SDI. They really haven't solved what people want to do is compare, but do things between data sets. So consistency between data sets, not necessarily just across. That's a standards, you know, never-ending story if ever. But that would be a really good thing to start to push, because it, you know, for it to become a planning tool or any tool, you need to be able to work through data sets, you know, across them rather than just, you know, between data sets. You've got to look down through things, and that's not to bring that and make it available within that kind of technology without a huge project. Someone needs to really start thinking about data cubes again and going, okay, well, here's 20 data sets that work really well together. They've got consistent frameworks and meanings and everything. That would be good. That'd be a great standards project.
Well, you know what? I'm just about to launch another poll about speakers for the showcase, because I think I'd like to see one around the digital twin personally. But also Ross has just gone, Ross Johnson from New South Wales, but I reckon New South Wales are so much more advanced than us in that space.
Well, I wouldn't say that.
No, and there seems to be a lot more state level data sets available in Victoria. And in Victoria, I've had a look, and you can upload a lot of the Delaware per VicMap data sets, but in New South Wales, there's not much state level stuff by comparison.
Okay. There's more collaboration in Victoria between different levels of government.
Like I said, it's the next gen SDI, so they've taken most of what was in the old VicMap thingo and shoved it up into, so it's much more accessible. There's some things that I was involved in the beta testing for them, and there's some things I suggested to them around, you know, look, you've got to be able to share what you've done. So it's good they've implemented that.
Maybe you should be one of our speakers, Milosh.
Oh, I might sound a bit cynical about digital. So I also said to them, so I'm in Melbourne Water now, and utilities are process centric. We're like factories. We have two big products, water and sewage, and we have a big factory process. And so we're not facility managers. You know, they're just there to facilitate the process. So our view of the world is actually more like manufacturing than it is the built environment. So people walk around the city and look, and we don't do that. We look at a process and go, how's the process working? Because that's where we spend all our money.
And doesn't digital twin help with
very much so? But they're a really strong. Digital twins actually came out of manufacturing before. They're very. If you want to look for top of the line digital twin, you know, actually working, you go to manufacturing. You know, or the automation, automotive industry. You go to Boeing with, you know, building planes that way. They've been doing it for years.
Yeah.
So very, very strong. And that, to me, certainly from a utilities perspective, when we start looking at digital twins in earnest, that's where we'll start. Not with GIS. It'll be part of it, but the driver will be the process, not where am I.
You know, I met the guy who heads up the boat building at Boeing and they use a lot of digital twin stuff in their manufacturing. I wonder if you'd do a talk for us at the forum.
The critical thing for that is a question needs to be, got to have a solid business question. And real ones, if you look at them, they actually feed back to the actual thing on the ground. So you can actually interact with the tech on the ground, the hardware. So it's not just, here's a live feed of something coming at me. Here's the bus is coming in 10 minutes. Is can you contact the bus driver to slow down? Now you've got a twin.
Well, actually, one of the things I noticed from the Victorian digital twin is they've actually got a BIM or BIM for the Sunbury railway station on there.
Melbourne Water gave them we did a scan to BIM of the Eastern Treatment Plant galleries, and we've given them that to them. They're good. They're interesting. The trick with those is keeping them up to date. So they've done some work around their 2D data, so that it's a federated model in the digital twin, where if, say, for example, City of Ballarat provides some data, it doesn't have to be loaded up into the globe. It's done through a data feed. Now that's a great step. That works really well for the 2D data. They still haven't solved. CSIRO still hasn't solved a 3D version of that. So that's a bit of a limitation for a lot of agencies having to. If you want to put 3D data on there, you've got to load it, which kind of means you're managing two sets of data. Not a good look for your your data purist. You be going, no, I want one source of data and I'll feed that. So that's a thing that they're going to have to think about. Then that's a CSIRO problem, not a Delwit problem, because CSIRO run the core product itself. I've been talking to them saying, solve that.
So look, here's the thing. I actually might reach out to you after the forum and get your ideas and some stuff.
Cool.
But feel free to put ideas into that speakers you would like or topics. But if you put an underscore in between words, then I'll get the whole word coming through rather than one word coming through. And the other thing was if you come up with anything after this event of speakers who you'd like to see, please send them through. And keep in mind the fact that we like to support diversity. So, when you're thinking about your speakers, I'm going to hand you over to George now, who's chomping at the bit and wants to talk to you about specs.
Okay. I do. Thanks, Kellee. I'll just go into business mode and remove my networking hat. So welcome everyone. Good morning. And if you've just come online, what you've been experiencing is the networking aspect, where we get to talk about different things. We've spoken about everything from broad beams through to digital twins. So we like to have broad topics that we talk about. Couple of housekeeping matters. I'm currently sharing my screen. If you have any issues, if you're not seeing the screen, please put something in the chat. I don't think there's anything that we can do at this end, but it may be that you need to log out and log back in. So a couple of things, SSI and Surveyors Registration Board of Victoria have allocated points to these events for your professional development. Please don't hesitate to let us know if you need something from us to be able to claim them. There is live polling going on, and as part of that, you'll see polls pop up in one of a number of places, possibly on your screen and in the chat box. And if you're in a pure Teams environment, at the top of your screen, you'll have a menu item called polls. And as Kim Hesse highlighted before, she's in the browser environment. If you click on that, you can see your polls. So with that, I'd like to introduce our team today, who you're going to see on and off over the next 7 weeks. Kellee Kellee Ireland is really our master of ceremonies. Kelly's been with us on these forums now for the last, is this your third one, Kellee, or your second one? Yep. I read your lips, but yes, I could see that you're on your third one. So, and as you've seen, if you've been to our early ones, then you'll see that our tech is improving, and, the look and feel is also improving. And that's also largely coming about from our marketing and our customer experience side from Kim Hesse and Natalie Northey. And if you've both got yes, there's Natalie in lovely pink sweater there. Well, pink I may be colorblind, but it looks pink to me. And Kim, if you can pop your video on. There you go. Look, they're even color coded. Amazing. And from our tech side, Gaby van Wyk. And Gaby does the tech talk, and he's got a couple of interesting topics to talk about today. So this session is really about what you can expect. Last year, we introduced the proposed changes, and over the past 12 months, we've been receiving feedback about whether the proposed changes would work or not. So now what we're presenting to you in the first of the series of our national forums is the changes that are going to occur in each and every specification. And last year we created a video that spoke purely about the A-SPEC, about the overview side of things, but we got some feedback, and we also experienced that there was a little bit of a disconnect between the overarching A-SPEC document, which is actually a companion document to all of the specifications. So we're incorporating that as part of every forum. So if you're attending more than one forum, you may see some elements that are duplicated, and I may present them a little bit differently, but essentially we want to make sure that we do not miss out talking about the key changes. So I want to start off with governance as part of the framework of why we focus so much on the data specifications. And we've introduced to you previously about 2 versions for each specification, existing versus new. And I'm briefly going to go through that. And we talked about it last year, but I am recapping on it to remind you. So we have 2 aligned versions. You will find exactly the same attributes, whether you're capturing assets that are already existing. So typically for audits in the field or retrospective data capture, or for assets that are new that are gifted to council. And it could be through subdivision developments, it could be through capital works programs, or it could be through community programs. We've added an additional column in the existing attribute, in the existing assets specification, and everyone in every specification. And we have categorized every attribute based on our experience of what is a core requirement, what is a required attribute, and what is an optional field. And when we say required, it will be information that's needed to fulfill on the kind of data that's necessary from an inventory perspective, but it may not be easily available, or it may not be available at all. And if it's not available, we get it. It's not available. And the optional field is, well, it's up to each user to determine whether they use it or not. But irrespective of that, the field, the attribute names, the file names, everything is exactly the same across the spec. and I'll show you that just now. So I've just taken an extract out of the area of work extent table. And as you can see, these are the attribute fields that are requested to be populated as part of delivering an area of work extent boundary. Now, the beauty of that is that once you put the structure in place and you're capturing and you create a project to do some retrospective capture, what we've now looked at is whether if you're going to provide an area of work extent boundary, which of those fields are actually required. And it may be that you can't find information about it. It may be, you can see under subname, we're not saying that a subname necessarily, but the field is called subname and it represents a subdivision or a project name. And the project name could be a backlog data capture project. So we want that as a compulsory field. And as you can see, all the other fields are optional. But primarily, it's about creating certainty about where that data came from, at what point in time, and then people know what it can be used for or can't be used for. Look, I'll mention it now. If you have any questions, please don't hesitate to put it into the chat. We have people monitoring the chats and they'll bring them up so that we make sure that we answer every single question. If we haven't got a response for you, we commit to getting a response back to you straight after the forum. But if you happen to think of a question once we've gone past a particular topic, don't hesitate to come back to it and post your question, and then we can continue on from here.
George, have you stopped sharing?
No.
I can't see the presentation anymore. Can anyone else not see it, or is it just me?
I can see it.
Okay.
I can see it.
I'll find it then.
John Cleverton, can you see it? Just nod your head.
Yep.
Thank you. Okay. Thanks, Kellee. And look, I guess these are the things that we'll discover as we go through these environments. Okay. So proposed changes. As I mentioned, last year we provided the details, and our intention is that at the end of this year, we will publish the new versions with the proposed changes. And a poll, we're going to run a poll at the end of this section of the proposed changes, where we'll ask you to give us your feedback on the preferred phase in time. So we'll leave it till then. We always encourage you to send us questions, and it's really great that you take up the opportunity. And what we've been discovering is that there's a significant time and effort being spent on creating precise boundaries to encompass all assets. So last year we spoke about an area of works ID. This is now being adopted as an attribute for all assets. And I'll show you that as we progress through this presentation. We spoke about renaming the asset class. There was a request to rename the asset class from building footprint to the building envelope. We've actually reverted back to the footprint as envelope is a common term used in the planning sector, and the feedback that we received was it would cause too much confusion. So we are staying with the term building footprint. We've renamed the attribute floor elevation to floor height to truly reflect that it's the height from the ground floor rather than the elevation as in a reduced level type elevation. We were requested to add unisex toilet attributes for public toilets. That has now been completed, and you can see that in the specifications. The specification for the updated version for B-SPEC has been distributed at the moment to all subscribers of B-SPEC within the A-SPEC community. It has not been distributed to any consultants at this point. If you would like to see a B-SPEC, a copy of the, if you're a consultant and you'd like to see a copy of the B-SPEC updates, please go onto the A-SPEC website into the proposed changes area, and if you have a login, you'll be able to download it. If you have any issues, just please send us an email through the info@GISSA email, and our team will address that.
And there's just a note there from Milosh that MW are looking at service address and extension to address that includes building floor, rooms, open space or space.
Okay.
In the chat.
Great. So we can talk a bit more about that. Milosh, have you had a chance to look at the B-SPEC document yet?
I had a quick read of the summary stuff. I haven't gone into it in any detail.
Okay.
But I will be doing that. Yeah, we are looking to, because of the advent of BIM and the relevance of that now in Melbourne Water, that's starting to sort of ramp up a little bit with some key projects. We need to extend our concept of location out, and the service address concept in Maximo that we're looking to extend. So that's something we want to feed in. If we're starting to get things through like a B-SPEC, we'd want to be able to translate that into Maximo locations, service locations.
Yes. And when you see the full version, you will see that we do have the building, the floor, and the room identifiers to be able to locate the different assets. So once you have a look at it, let's have another conversation about that. One of the things that we discovered was in our endeavour to add generic statements like the currency and the unit cost and unit reference as a good example, we found that they weren't appropriate for specific asset classes that we had in the specs. So we've gone through and we've removed that requirement to have that kind of information at particular asset class levels. So please have a look through the documents to make sure that you are clear with that. And we've done this across all of the specifications. So we've standardized whether you need currency, unit cost, and unit reference for each of the asset classes. And there are a number of instances where we've actually removed them. One of the questions was information supply and expectations from councils. Now I've got it highlighted in yellow, and I've put client there because what we're seeing is that we're seeing some variations occur. There are particular instances, scenarios where we've been asked to moderate conversations because somebody has interpreted the specs and said, oh, well, why don't we add the Joe flavor to it. It's only an extra couple of attributes. There's a particular impact to that. And what we want to make sure is that it's not about taking the specs and adding your addendum, and therefore it's your version of the specs that are required. The specs have worked so far because people know what to expect from a delivery perspective, and the end users know what to expect from a receipt perspective. So what we're endeavouring to do is to make sure that if there are variations that are required, they come about as requests for additions or removals or modifications to the current specifications, particularly attributes. So GISSA's position is that we do not support those addendums. I'm not saying that it's not important to your organisation, but we are interested to find out how important it is and whether that would be a contribution to everybody in the community. And if it is the case, then we will put it past the community for inclusion. And look, and like Kellee.
Sorry, there's just a comment, another comment there that Melbourne Water is also working with unclass or uniclass via WSAA to extend uniclass to include water utility centric classes.
Great. Thanks, Milosh. Yeah, uniclass is obviously really important, and particularly through the VDAS element as well. And we'll talk, and I've got a small section where I talk a little bit about the BIM integration with A-SPEC and what these different classification systems mean. So thanks for raising it, Milosh. Apologies, Gabby, I've got you as a lower G.
Don't worry.
Dealing with BIM and Revit, Gabby's going to cover it off in his tech talk. I'll set the scene, and then Gabby will go into more detail. Dealing with VDAS, again, I'll cover that off as part of our future proofing of the specifications. And again, these are all requests that are coming straight from the community, and a lot of these changes are also coming from the community. So it's not about, oh, you know, George has come up with a great idea or Gabby's come up with a great idea. It's like, okay, if you come up with an idea, let's put it to the community to see if it's workable or not. Now, this was a really interesting question. Class 10B building, sports coaches box, sheds, is it a building or is it a structure? Now, one of the, I don't think we did a poll for this, Kellee, but is it possible while I'm talking about this for you to just generate a quick poll for everybody to do that? Okay, great. Please keep a lookout. So one of the key things around Class 10B buildings is that it's, as you can see, that they are minor structures. So it really comes back to the level of detail that you really need to be able to report on within, and when I say you, I'm talking about the asset owner, as to the level of detail that is needed to report on it, either from a management perspective or a financial perspective. And so the poll is going to be, do you think it should be a building or a structure? And after we run that poll, then I'll present to you what GISSA's position is about that. So I'll just give you 30 seconds to do that before we continue. Now, while people are responding to that, and I'll just go back a step. So whether you're an asset owner or a consultant, happy to get your perspective on what you think about it. Okay, so we can see I can see the responses are coming in really quickly. It's really great. So Kellee, can you also keep me on track with timing, please? Okay, so what time? Can you give me a 10-minute and a 5-minute warning, please?
Yep.
Thank you. Okay, so far we have 13 responses that I've seen, 14 responses. Great. So just a few more seconds, then we'll close off that poll and we'll see the responses. And Milosh, I agree. Distinguish on whether it's major or minor function, perhaps. I think that's a really important part of the importance of how that feature or how that asset is going to be managed going forward for the life of its for its life. Kellee, can you now show us the responses, please? Close that poll and show us the responses. Gaby, you want to say something?
Everybody said structure.
Yes. Yep. I can see that. Gaby, did you want to say something?
No, just that the results are showing up for me. I don't know for other people.
Yep. Yeah, I can see the results, and so far 100% everybody has identified it as a structure, and that's our position as well, that it is essentially a minor building, so there's less detail required about it. We will put more information. It's quite likely that you could use, depending on the level of detail that you want to capture about it, you could certainly capture it within the B-SPEC, or it could be captured within the O-SPEC as a minor structure, where there is far less detail about that. So that's something that we will explore further to make sure that there's consistency about the way that it's going to be delivered. Thank you, everybody, for the people that participated in the poll. We brought this up as an example last year, and I just want to repeat it and answer any questions that may arise. So if we talk about compounds, and someone says to you, I want you to provide A-SPEC data. So what does that really mean? So I've used this as an example. This is this is some documentation that we got from Central Coast Council, who are doing a water treatment plant upgrade, and what they didn't just want to capture the details about the treatment facilities. They wanted an opportunity to capture details that were actually within this compound. So I've just done a very rudimentary example of what needs to be captured or what could be captured. So right now we're showing elements of the road reserve, the pavement, the seal. We just did an area about landscape. We did an area for hard stand. There's the building envelope. Well, it's building footprint now. There's mechanical equipment. And as you can see, there's also the 3D element of the building itself. So what we suggest is that start looking at it in the context of, okay, you may be a water authority that have a treatment plant, but what about the car parks? What about the roads? What about the landscaping and all the other features? How are you proposing to manage those? The same with a council depot. Yes, the main area might be the building where the people operate from.
And also, Melbourne Water uses the concept of a building in a zone on a site.
Great. Yeah, so we, so Miloš, we'll sit down and we'll have a talk to you about what modifications we could make to B-SPEC and to the other specs to make sure that we have these sites actually captured. We've started doing it within pumping station sites for water and sewer, where we're talking about what are the assets within the sites and then componentizing them. So I think this is really relevant for open space as well, particularly with parks, you know, with what we see in the open space areas, and we'll be covering the same concepts there. But so we'll talk more. Thanks again for your input. Last year we created these cut down versions. We haven't distributed them this year because we wanted to minimize the amount of effort required. So what we've done is we've spent time on the actual full document to see if to make sure that we've got everything covered. Now I've got a poll there. Do you want to see the cut down version? So this is a short notice for you again, Kellee. If you could just do that while I'm talking to this particular comment. Oh, thank you. Well done. If you could respond to that. Now, just to recap on the color coding, as per our process, we use yellow and blue highlighting, and in some instances green highlighting that indicates information that's existed has just been moved to another space, right? But the yellow is very much new or modified wording. The blue is wording that we're going to remove. And this is across all of the specifications. So please, please respond to this question and look, and this is across the whole community. It's not just for the end users, the councils and the water authorities and other authorities. This is also for the consultants. Would it make it easier for you just to see the changes rather than having to look through the whole document? And we'll be running these polls across all of the forums, and then we'll recap at the showcase to say what we're going to do going forward.
So maybe a few more responses would be great if you can just jump into the chat or the polls and answer that. I've only got 9. Be good to get a few more. Bit of sample. Thanks.
Yep. Thank you very much. Happy either way. Cool. Yep. Thank you. We're now getting more responses. Appreciate that. We'll wait another 15 seconds and then we'll move on to the next topic.
Well, there's a comment from Miloš again. Whole doc or context with links to changes?
Or context. Yep. Yep. Understand.
Or context. Yeah, sorry. I can't read very well.
Okay. All right. So so we've got so thank you again for everybody. Yes, we've got up to 17.
And another comment there for you, George.
Yeah. Thanks, Johan. Should not be a separate document, but an attribute on the full document. Okay, thank you. Okay, we'll close that off now, Kellee, and well, okay, actually can stay in the chat and people can come back to it if they haven't voted on it previously. Just one of the things I like about this Teams environment. You didn't think you'd hear me say that, did you, Kellee? But I like the way that the polls, well, in my environment, sit in the chat, and I can go back to them if I've missed them. So please don't hesitate.
Great idea, Kellee, is what you were going to say, wasn't it?
I was actually going to go further, Kellee, and say you were right.
This is recorded, George.
I don't know why I ever doubted you, Kellee. Yes, it is recorded. Okay, asset and asset data handover checklist. We've now incorporated it as part of the A-SPEC overview document, and we make reference to it in every specification. And really what this is about is to enhance the current process to check what the handover, what the data handover is, not just the asset handover, but what data is expected to be handed over at the same time that the asset is handed over. And we're advocating that this becomes part of the assessment process, and it becomes part of a sign-off between the asset owner and the consultant. You know, we're constantly being asked to create A-SPEC compliant data, and this is one of the checklists that we ask our clients to complete, so that way we are clear about what they expect. It's okay to have a generic statement that says must provide data in accordance with A-SPEC, but what does that actually mean? So we use this to be the specific measurable indicator of what is required. And really, would the checklist save you time? It's a simple question. Our experience is it's been saving us a significant amount of time just from the toing and froing of what people understand is required versus what is actually required.
George, can I add something?
Of course, Gaby.
I think that one of the other advantages that we've discovered in terms of this particular the checklist is that sometimes the asset owner hasn't actually thought through what it is that they want, and then they see something on the list and they think, okay, that is true, and I've forgotten to mention that to the developer or something like that. So it's a checklist for the asset owner to their advantage, but it's also for the consultant, making it very clear that they know what is expected. And in our environment, you know, we know what has to be validated. So it's good all round.
No, that's great. It's a really good point. And it's really just another check and balance that we go along the way.
George, it's Milosh here.
Yes, Milosh.
I've just put a chat in, but I should just say this out loud. So in a classic design and construction context, if it's a reasonably big build, you've often got several years between and often different contractors. So we're looking at, as part of BIM implementation, you might have, let's say you've got 50 attributes that you want to attach to a BIM object. As you go through that life cycle, you know, concept design, detail design, preliminary construction design, construction, commission, as a sort of standard kind of life cycle, that LOD will change. So checklists are good.
Yep.
Breaking it down into a life cycle idea would be useful too, in certain kinds of, in a lot of those sorts of situations, because it tells us what our expectation of the contractor is, and their understanding what we want as you walk the building through the life cycle.
Yeah, look, it's a really good point that you raise, because as we know, we were just asked to quote on some data capture on of a feature that may not be finished till 2026. So having this checklist in place, if there's change of personnel along the way, really beds down what the expectations are. And if there needs to be a review, can be a review. But it's a really good point that you raise. And yes, there's a comment in the chat about act like a QA function for the client, make sure it's been delivered as needed. I think that's really important. A lot of the holdups that we're hearing about is interpretation of what was expected to be delivered versus what was actually delivered, and then the argy-bargy of who's going to be right. So if we want to remove that element of, you know, being right and just doing what's workable, then we need to go down this kind of path. So as I can see from the responses, everybody who's responded so far has said yes. And you're right, Anthony. Not all. There are some LGAs who expect S&W, but you're right, not in WA, and the same in Victoria. We don't have councils in Victoria who request S&W. We have councils in New South Wales who request S&W, such as Central Coast Council. But it's case by case scenario. Okay, so new asset classes. So following, so I'm going to talk about new asset classes. I'm going to talk about attributes. I'm going to talk about code lists. So once we complete that conversation, then we're going to have a poll about a preferred phase-in time for these changes that we're talking about, and it's something that we can adopt. And I'll talk a little bit more about that just prior to starting the next phase. We've only just finished this asset class, and people who have subscribed to B-SPEC would receive this earlier this week, and which is going to be an addendum to this, well, incorporated into the specs, into B-SPEC. And we've only just realized that we haven't had any stairs covered. We have stairwells covered, but we don't have stairs or ladders covered, as in such as the photos that we have on the screen there. And the bottom right photo is a ladder configuration with a safety cage that appears on an infrastructure feature, a tank. So it may be that we have a slightly different version of stairs and ladders for infrastructure assets than we do for buildings. But at this point, this is what's going to be included in the B-SPEC document when it is released at the end of this year. Don't hesitate to put any comments or suggestions into the chat as you have been. Good question. Would stairs cover escalators too? No, we have a feature called conveyance area in B-SPEC, which covers escalators and lifts and stairwells. But stairs specifically are different. And again, please review the documentation when you get a chance. We have until November for all of the specifications, for feedback for all the specifications. Vertical transport is a term we see a lot covering these types of assets. Okay, understood. Now, I spoke about the primary changes. We've got some minor changes with some individual attributes and in different asset classes. But the primary change across all of the specs is to make sure that every table has an area of work identifier attribute. And in doing that, it creates a direct link with every asset that's delivered to its project, to its subdivision, to its capital works project area as well. So sort of removes the emphasis on having your boundaries be exact, because our intention is that if you have overlapping boundaries, all of a sudden, if you're using the boundary to add an attribute to the assets, it could become problematic, and actually has become problematic for some users. So we've gone down the path of having an additional attribute that will be used. We've also seen that there are some assets that we don't have unique identifiers for. So wherever that has occurred, we've added a unique identifier attribute field into the asset table. So they are the primary changes that you will see. So I just want to cover off the first point that I made about source codes only for existing. Now, the question is, can I use all the codes for existing and new assets? And the short answer is no. And why we say no is that when we're talking about existing assets, the source of material could be anywhere from on-screen data capture to tracing off an aerial photo. And so we want those options available, whereas newly constructed information, it's newly constructed information. We know what the source of that capture is. And predominantly, we want it to be an as constructed element. We want it to be as constructed information, not digitized off a screen or off an aerial photo. That does not constitute as constructed information. Now, with the new asset class, stairs, we've included those 6 that are sitting, 5 new asset class, 5 new code lists: baluster, rail and stair material, feature type, rail type, stair purpose, and stringer type. Cladding we've added as a new code list for the building footprint. We realized that in all of the information that we had been gathering, we had not been collecting or requesting to collect the kind of cladding for a building. So that is now sitting on the building footprint. We're continuing to tidy up our code lists, make sure the entries are relevant. And something that's really important for everybody to note is that the specs are not updated when a code is added or changed. So we've now created 3 ways to access them.
Excuse me, George, you've got 15 minutes.
Great, perfect timing. Okay, and I'll answer that question from Milosh, that would be electrical equipment, and it would be covered as part of, we'd have a look at the kind of features that we need to capture for solar panels, and if it fits into the electrical equipment bracket, we put it in there. If it needs some additional attributes, we add them. If it's completely separate attributes, we would create a new asset class. And that's pretty much the same process for all of the changes that we look at when we're modifying attributes or looking to create new asset classes. In 2021, we asked you if you would use the API, and predominantly the answer was yes, and some people wanted more information. Gabby's going to cover that off. And essentially what Gabby's going to cover off, and this comes back to the number of ways that you can access the code list, is we will still provide a spreadsheet on the A-SPEC website for manual access. And it will be a derivative of Digital Hive's web app. So Digital Hive have now completed their web app and associated API. And it's just been migrated to another platform, so it's now available. And Gabby will talk a bit more about that. And there's a link on the Digital Hive website to register your interest in accessing it. Yeah, thanks for putting that up, Kellee. Now, there is going to be a cost if you want to access the web app and API, and it's essentially an incremental cost to cover our development costs. We don't see that we're going to make a lot of money on it, but we want to be able to cover our costs for the development of it. And essentially, the cost is $215 plus GST per annum, and you'll get access to the web app and the API, and the web app you'll be able to access on any smart device. The APIs, as I said, the API, Gabby will talk more technically about how you can incorporate that. Now, we do have a special deal. So anybody attending any of the forums, you'll be provided a free trial until the end of the year. So please get onto the Digital Hive website. And
sorry, George, and I'm just going to open up this next poll because this one I have turned on, track who selects what. Okay. So I can follow anyone up after this meeting and help you.
Okay. Oh, great. Okay, so that'd be more efficient than everybody bombarding Gabby and yeah.
Agreed.
And yes, thanks, Gabby. And our plan is that at the next renewal, the subscribers to the specifications will have this included as part of the features available to them.
But I've also just put in the chat a link to register your interest for that as well.
Oh, great. Thank you. Thanks, Kellee. Yeah, please go to the chat and take that on. Now, we did have the other poll about the time frame for the phase-in period. And really what we're asking you for is to give us an indication of, once we say the specs are published, let's just say the specs are published at the end of December. Do you then request a 3-month or 2-month, 3-month or 6-month phase-in period? I think they're the options, aren't they, Kellee? Yep, 2 months, 3 months or 6 months. So please respond to that, okay? And I can see that so far we've got 8 responses, and this is across the whole community, not just the end users. So please take the opportunity to respond, and we will be asking this question at every forum, and then we'll summarize it at the showcase. So right now we're talking about a 6-month phase-in period where the majority of people are interested. Please continue to answer those polls while I move on into the next phase. Future proofing. I'm going to present to you some information that I discovered through my work in New Zealand a number of years ago when we were part of the team that developed the national metadata standards. And it's really about the next level. Okay, so we talk a lot about collecting data to a specific format. Now, if we're going to make data-driven decisions for investment, for infrastructure investment, then we need to look at the 3 areas that data comes from. And what I've identified here is, okay, the source of the attributes for the inventory comes from the design and construct phase, the as-built phase, and some elements for the AMS, such as condition, because we know that the asset is in its best condition of its life. And what we're seeing is that in New Zealand, they're differentiating them by talking about physical attributes, the design and construct being the physical attributes, the as-built elements being the metadata attributes, and the condition, things like condition and use, asset management attributes. And we also know that what contributes to that is details about the repairs and maintenance. So what I want to show you over the next few slides is the influence that the as constructed information has on the asset management side of things that I've seen. I'm not saying that you need to adopt this. All I want to do is portray to you the level of rigor that is being put into it in other jurisdictions. So from a traditional approach, we've got this figure 9. We want to see what the sweet spot is for the replacement. And so among the challenges facing an asset manager, the greatest is knowing when it is the right time to replace an asset, considering all the available information. So figure 9 is roughly that: condition 1 to 5, repairs and maintenance, and over time. What we're now seeing, what we're also seeing is that people are now starting to overlay criticality as an influence. So the importance of that feature, the consequence of a feature that may collapse, or the consequence, such as in earthquakes or tremors, then the sweet spot changes, depending on high criticality, low criticality. And this is the kind of detail that we're seeing. It's the kind of analytics for optimized replacement that we're seeing. I'm not professing to be an asset management specialist. I'm not, but I just wanted to portray, to convey this information. What we're also seeing is probability of failure. Now, the 2 graphs are quite interesting because in some instances, Kelly?
5 minutes. 5 minutes, George.
Thank you. Perfect. So in some instances, we're going to have significant amount of records, so we can identify with some certainty what the probability of failure is. And in other instances, where there's scant records, we've got low confidence. And that's typically what happens. So we're seeing a shift in not just capturing consistent information about the as constructed, but also looking at the influence of as constructed data schemas on the other schemas. So whether it's a schema for condition, whether it's a schema for repairs and maintenance or utilization, we're now seeing that these kind of models are now being built. And I haven't explored this to any level of detail in Australia, but I suspect that there are a lot of councils that go down this path and rely on their asset management vendor to give them the kind of tools for predictive analysis and predictive modeling that they do. But there's some fundamentals behind this that need to be put in place. Okay, I now want to talk about GDA Shift. So minor changes to the template, and it's to reflect whether an organisation goes to GDA 2020 or ATRF 2014. So one of the key things is that we know that you can always put notes or comments in the document. Okay, and the date submitted and the construction date, along with the datum, will tell you what, particularly if it's GDA 2020, will give you enough information. But if you're going to use ATRF, then there's more information that's required. So what we've done is we've added these two fields, the start date of the observation and the end date of the observation. That will be really critical for identifying what kind of shift is going to occur when, particularly if you're using ATRF. And we don't know what the prevalence is of ATRF over GDA 2020. But Kellee will kick off a poll for that, just to get a sense of what people are doing. I'll continue to talk. Please complete that at your convenience. Now, we also talk about, from a data governance perspective, about asset recording principles and noting deviation from design. Really critical, because this provides a certainty and confidence, and it removes the time and effort to verify what has changed. We are seeing that one of the biggest issues at the moment is trying to confirm what has changed from the design. What we're saying is, if there's been any changes, please use this form to document the change, not the process for the approval. The approval's already done. This is what's happened. That's what has varied from the design, and just document it here. And this can be correlated with what the construction supervisors have recorded or not recorded. And what we want to do is we really want to consider the possible impact to the surveyor and their client. And we know that data has been delivered and there's been confusion about what has been designed versus what has been built and what data has been provided, that it really creates issues. So we want to make sure that a lot of these processes are put in place prior to permits, prior to permits being issued, but having the checklists and having the recording of the changes will actually add to the certainty. From a data governance perspective, our position is we do not advocate that you capture other authorities' data. It's non-authoritative data. You want to consider whether there's a breach occurring by capturing another authority's data. And one of the impacts could be that whatever you've captured may be out of date as quickly as when you capture it. And if you're going to be making decisions based on what you've captured of other authorities' data, then you want to put something in place that gives you confidence that what you have actually exists. And our suggestion is those 2 points that we've made at the bottom of the page. We've talked about locating assets, and really we're talking about spatial accuracy and positional accuracy.
You're done.
I'm done. I've got 2 slides. Okay. So have a look in the updated version, make comments on it. And this just leads into Gabby's talk about object relationships and how we see 3D objects in a BIM-enabled environment and in a geospatial representation. We know that every object has can be represented in the 3D environment. What Gabby's going to take you through is how to spatial relationships and validations, code lists, and BIM integration, talking about the kind of data that can be extracted from 3D objects. So I'm going to stop sharing now. So Gabby, over to you. Thanks, Kellee.
All right. So as George was saying, I'm going to talk about spatial relationships a little bit, then about the code list, and then we'll have a small video on Revit. So I wanted to quickly talk about when we do validation of submitted data. We've had people confused about the fact that we actually do check for spatial relationships. Now, embedded in the specs are a number of spatial relationships, and people aren't always aware of them. And so what I've done here is I've just created a list of the ones that we find most often and the ones that we also check for. Inside's normal, it's the standard inside. Cross is where where boundaries cross. Disjoint is where 2 things are not touching and they are not crossing each boundary, so they are disjoint. And touching is where a point, at least one point, is shared between 2 objects. And then start endpoint touching is where just 2 particular points are touching. And what I'd like to just quickly go through is here is a matrix that we've created. And if you look at this matrix, it tells me that if I'm looking at a building footprint, then it's disjoint relationship to other building footprints. So if you look at this and that, okay, sorry, I just missed the area extent there. So first of all, area extent, everything should be inside the area extent. Building footprints, the building footprint and another building footprint must have a disjoint relationship, and other objects must be inside that building footprint. And then so it carries on. I'm not going to go through all of these, but I would suggest that when you do your the data capture, consider the relationships, the spatial relationships that may exist, and you'll find that they are defined in the specs. And if you want to know a little bit more, this is how we do the validation, and this is what we use for the validation. So I think the key that I'd like to explain to people, would like people to take away, is sit down and actually have a matrix for yourself, where you put these things out so that when you capture data and when you're looking at data, you actually consider those spatial relationships as well. Enough about that. I didn't want to spend too much time on that one. So just quickly talking about the code lists. As George indicated, we had issues with our initial platform. We've now moved to another platform, and it's back up. The application is up, and I actually want to quickly go to the Digital Hive website. So if you go to the Digital Hive website, you will find that there is a link and also a QR code that will allow you to get direct access to that the public code list. Now there's two web applications. There's one that's a scaled down version, which is the version that's available to the general public, and that's what I'll show you in a minute. And then there's a bigger one that we use to manage code, so it's got a bit more functionality. And in the future, it's not the case at the moment, but in the future, we're hoping that the code list, the online code web application, will replace or become the primary source for the code list. That's not the case at the moment, but it's much better for us to have an online environment so that you can actually go and see what code lists are available currently, and there'll be more regular updates on that. Now, if you go to the link or if you scan that QR code, if you do not have a username and password, then you can try that username and password, and that's available to everyone. What that will do is that'll give you access, and I'll show you. I'm actually logged in over here as that user. It'll give you that access. But if you want to have more functionality, then I would request that you fill this form in, add some comments, and submit that to us. So just quickly looking at the public code list. So I've shown this before. I'll just go through this very quickly again. It gives me the ability to search on different codes, or find definitions for codes. So if I want to know what are the concs in the database, then there's all sorts of concs. Just type in and you get a list, and I can filter on the spec. I can filter on lists. So if I want to go status, then I can get all the asset statuses, things like that. I'm not going to go into too much detail here, but the thing is that this gives you the ability to very quickly search on either the code list itself, or codes, or descriptions, any of those, and you can filter that out for particular specifications. Other functionality that we've got, and I'll jump to the, I'll show you the new code requests. So thanks to John Cleverden, because at a previous, the previous forum, John asked for this kind of functionality. And so we built in the ability for users to submit a code request. So you get into the field, you have some sort of new material, and you want to request a code. You want to know what the code is. You can't find an existing code, so go on and then capture a new code. So if you went onto the form, then, and if you had permissions, then you would be able to capture. Now you'll see that I've got a red mark there that tells me I don't have permissions to change anything. So I can't, with this user credentials, with these credentials, I cannot capture anything. But I can still go and look at the list. The other part is, so the first function gives me a list of all the codes. The second function gives me the list of what other people have asked for. So this is the list of functions that or codes that people have requested. And again, this is something that John asked for. So this is the list. If I click on one of them on the description over here, you'll see that you have the ability to put in some information, tell us why you want the code, what is it that, around the code that you want, but you can also take photos. So if you have something and you're not sure what that code could be or what it should be, give us as much information as possible. We'll capture the information and we'll be able to get back and deal with that, provide the code or not. Maybe there's another code that exists, but this can become an easy way to work with different new codes and capture new codes. And that gives us a way to interface with people. All right, so that's that for the code list. If you have a new, if you have a full license, then you also have the ability to query the code. To query the codes using the API. Now, we've had some clients try the API and they found it hard because APIs, you need to have some programming skills. And what we've done is we've developed an FME workbench. And so I'd like to suggest if you do have FME, you can use FME to download some of the codes for you, and do it on a basis where the FME workbench runs every 2 or 3 months or whatever it is, so that your users can all get the latest codes and you can automate that download. All right, I'll move on to the final part of the presentation. And that's BIM integration. So BIM methodology, BIM is, as we know, it's a methodology to manage buildings through the life cycle. And what we're going to talk about today is how we can use B-SPEC to assist with the asset management and integration between asset management and other applications. Now, I'm just going to jump out because what I've got is I've created a little video that I will play in a minute. Oops. It started too quickly. All right, so here's a little video. I've canned it. It's using Revit, but it's just a quick overview of our process for integrating B-SPEC or using B-SPEC to integrate with asset management and your something like Revit, a BIM software. Okay, so let's hope this works. You hear the sound, Kelly?
No sound. Do you want to just talk to it?
Yes, I'll talk to it.
It's a red hat though. Oh yeah, go.
Okay, I can't talk against myself because I'm hearing it.
You've got to redo your share with sound.
I did that. Oh, gosh. This is annoying.
Just put the video on mute, Gabby, and just talk to it.
All right, I'll do that. Just give me a sec. All right, that's just some intro stuff. I'll try and catch up what I've got here is a blank Revit model. I'm using Dynamo. Dynamo is something like FME that you can use to work with. It's an ETL, and I'll pause this as I go. So here's the Dynamo script that you can see. What we're doing with Dynamo is I've created a process that actually reads the asset attributes from the official Excel spreadsheets that GISSA publishes, and with these Dynamo scripts, we're able to generate basically something. It's a public parameters file or a shared parameters file, and it creates all the parameters that I have available in my model. Sorry, that I have available in B-SPEC. It kind of creates a repository initially. Once the repository is created, I can then use another script to populate models. So I'll jump to around about here. If you look at this particular screenshot, you'll see that queried a building, and at this stage now I've got the parameters, the B-SPEC parameters loaded, but there's no data associated at this point. I'm then using another script again to generate the basically it's the parameters field inside of Revit. It looks a little bit like a spreadsheet, and I can deal with it as if it's a spreadsheet. I have to then map it, and there is a bit of a problem with Revit in that a lot of the attributes are different. For instance, doors and windows, they're two separate asset classes, whereas in B-SPEC that's one asset class. So you've got to do a little bit of a mapping. But what we've done is we've set that up, and we've got the Revit models, the Dynamo scripts that allows us to automate that process. And then once we run it, let me just see here. Okay, here again, I've got in this screen, I've just set it up in such a way that I've got the empty fields in Revit. I've got some data over here also in Revit. If I then run the next part of the script, I've just used a bunch of dummy data that I've now updated in Excel. And initially I used proper data, but it wasn't visible or visible enough. And so for this demo, what I did is I just used bunches of X's, but to illustrate how I can use an Excel spreadsheet, populate that, and for that data to be reflected, and then I can change the data in the Excel spreadsheet, and it automatically updates the data in Revit, and I can set it. Look, there's two ways in which you can do it. You can do it as a manual approach, or you can do it as an automated approach. And so we've done it through the automated approach, which means that you can go and make changes on either side, either inside Revit or inside, in this case, my Excel spreadsheet, but the Excel spreadsheet could be a database that's linked to an asset management system. So that's, I apologize that I didn't have sound, but I hope that here I'm just showing how all those changes occur and can run through. That was actually a good thing that that the sound didn't work, because now I got through it much quicker than I think what the video is long. So at that point, I'll stop that, and I'll open it up for questions.
So, Gaby, just sorry if I missed something here. What's the intent of that? Are you seeing that as a product or as a service? What are you thinking?
We're seeing this as a service, where one of the but you know what, at this point in the discussion, it's also helping other people to set up similar situations. The service that we may offer in future is to manage people's BIM models for them. In some instances, it's difficult for people to get the BIM model and to manage it within a B-SPEC environment. I guess one of the biggest reasons why we started this discussion is
Sorry to interrupt, Gabby. You've got 1 minute left.
Okay, so one of the biggest reasons why we started this is just to show people that B-SPEC is valid within a BIM environment and can be used to create that link between your asset management system and your BIM. So that was probably the biggest reason why we wanted to show this, not necessarily to focus on the kind of services that we are offering.
Just quickly then, because you haven't got much time, I'd suggest you going back the other way is also would be quite valid.
Oh,
so
and it does.
Getting you've got a model, that's great. Often we want to extract stuff from that to put into, things like Maximo or whatever. That's what a lot of utilities run at. Maximo as the asset management system. That's where everything's going to get work orders and so forth. So there's a part of the implementation of DE within a utility is about data extraction from models. So it's kind of in the reverse of what you did there. Rather than populating the model, what we're doing is data mining basically.
Well, look, maybe it didn't come out clear, but we are able to go both. We are able to go both ways. We do.
Cool. Well, that's an interesting thing then.
Yep. So it's the difference is, or the difficulty is that the asset attributes that's defined within Revit are sometimes unnecessary or weird. And so there's a lot more mapping that needs to be done. And for floor spaces, easy. Doors and windows, easy. But some of the other classes, it becomes complex. So it's not straightforward, but the problem is not the sharing or the ingesting or exporting. The problem is making sure that the BIM model that we map the BIM model attributes correctly.
There's a big push to try and move everyone to IFC to get some consistency, because all these walled garden formats are a bit of a pain in the proverbial. Unfortunately, we're dealing with things like Civil 3D, Plant 3D, you name it, right? Unfortunately, IFC is not there yet as a general format, but we're watching that and tracking that pretty closely, because ultimately we'll want to specify to contractors, give it to us in IFC when that's ready, but it's not ready yet. So we're kind of dealing with this kind of half, in-house to standard.
Here's a suggestion for you. Why don't you tell your contractors to give it to you in B-SPEC?
We'll take that one offline. That's probably not going to work.
Okay, let's take it offline. I think that's a great discussion to be had. All right, Kellee, George, back to you guys.
Thanks, Gabby. I'm glad that it all worked out. So, George, it is back to you for the wrap up. Okay. But before you do that, I just wanted to quickly, one of the things that I wanted to ask sort of the forum attendees is we're considering ways for making a bit of an engagement platform for people who subscribe to the specs to, I guess, collaborate and talk and send messages and stuff like that and share information between yourselves. is that something that you'd be interested in? Like, you know, what are your thoughts on that type of thing? Do you want me to put a poll up? I can poll it if nobody wants to put their hand up and speak. So I don't think we have a poll about that. So what I will do is, whilst I hand over to George, I'll stick a poll up and let me know if we create a platform to facilitate sort of casual conversations and share experiences. Would you want to use it? That's kind of my question, and I'll do that, and I'll hand over to George while he does the wrap up.
Yeah, thank you for that, Kelly. I'm just navigating forward to my next slide. Still a novice at.
But while you're doing that,
I'm there.
Probably WASI uses a members, you know, post a question, post an interesting thing format, which is very well used.
Oh, good.
So I guess it depends on people's keenness to participate, but certainly I've found that to be an excellent way to collaborate with others, you know, with the same problems.
Yeah, and I'm thinking also in relation to like tech issues and stuff, like if you're an expert in a particular area and, you know, somebody else needs some help, you reach out to each other. And
well, we use it for everything: standards, sharing technology breakthroughs, sharing basic how to, you know, has anyone done this before?
Yeah, cool. Well, I'm going to stick the poll up. So with the others, so there's a few there that are open that we are hoping that you will respond to. So any suggestions on how we can improve our forums, or obviously the communication platform which I've just put up, and whether the content is relevant to you and helpful, etc. So the more feedback we get, the better we can make this for our users. Over to you, George.
Thank you, Kelly. Okay, so just as a wrap up, some of the key things. Proposed release dates. So the proposed release dates are documents completed by the end of this calendar year. It's really important that we'll work on a phase-in period. From what we've seen today, the preferred phase-in period will be 6 months. So if the documents are published at the end of December, that means the phase-in period for a 6-month period will mean approximately 1st of July that they become relevant. And what happens then is that the immediate previous version is no longer supported. Doesn't mean we may not, that you may not, that doesn't mean that you won't get data in that format or in that structure. It just means we'll do no further development on that one. Gabby spoke to us about the code lists. The code lists will always be available via spreadsheet. And for organizations that want to do the downloads themselves, we are advocating for the web app or the API to facilitate machine-to-machine communication, and also to fast-track communication between proposed codes and changes in codes. So that's part of our continuous improvement. We're always looking at what we can do more efficiently. So your feedback is really valuable. One of the things I picked up, Gabby, which you wouldn't have seen in the chat, was Milosh asked about that FME workbench that you spoke about for the API. When would that be available?
I already responded to Milosh.
Great.
I said I'll be in touch with him.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. Thank you for that. I want to talk a little bit about classifications and A-SPEC. It was touched was touched on about IFCs, about Uniclass. Gaby spoke about the BIM integration and how to extract data from 3D objects. So I just want to put a less technical perspective onto it. Our view is that the conversation about which classification system to use in a 3D environment will be ongoing. We know that it's challenging to use Uniclass or Omniclass or IFCs because of the philosophies of what their structures were. We have no preference to which classification system is used. Our objective is, irrespective of the classification system used, how do you get data into your asset management environment? And that's one of the primary objectives of that that demonstration that Gaby showed. It was to show that whatever libraries you use within your in that instance Revit environment, we want to automatically populate data in schedules that can then be extracted, loaded into asset management environment, unique asset IDs applied, and then linked back to the 3D object. That's where we see the way of the world going forward. Yes, we'll always have a 2D GIS environment. That's fine. But I think one of the real benefits of having these 3D models is that you can link it directly to your asset management systems as well as your GIS environment as needed. So that's what we'll continue to advocate, and there'll be more work that we'll show. And the primary thing is that classification system is not the driving force. What the driving force is the data that's required to be able to manage that asset going forward and how it can sit in an environment such as an asset management system when there isn't the maturity available to use 3D models. So that's the main thing that I wanted to talk about classifications.
George, can I just make a quick comment about
sure
models?
Yes.
So mapping models through life cycle is really important. And the most common terminology used in that space is a tag. It's not quite like an asset ID.
Mm-hmm.
Certainly in the water space, utility space, we have a strong still and ongoing and forever use of process diagrams. So schematic diagrams, we call them P&IDs. They are critical to our business. In fact, probably more critical than the sort of layout model itself. But they're in things like Plant 3D and AutoPlan and what have you, there's a relationship between the schematic, something on a process, and something in space, the actual location. And that's usually managed by the tag. The third thing to think about in this tagging space is manuals, maintenance manuals, and operating manuals also get tagged. The same tag for the particular thing. That nexus is, that's a pretty important nexus in a utility space. And you'll find that same paradigm in oil and gas, very strong in oil and gas concept, because they're all basically manufacturing units of one kind or another. So that's obviously that's a big fish to fry, but that's an area that we're very interested in that tagging concept. And we spend a hell of a lot of time with our contractors trying to sort that out and sort it out consistently. We don't have a consistent tagging system across Melbourne Water, and we should. And it's that nexus between model, process, and documents. And the documents can be manuals like PDFs and what have you, but they can also be other types of schedules. And so it's that whole package of stuff. And that changes through the that can change through the life cycle. What you tag at concept and what it ends up being tagged as doesn't have to be the same thing as you move through that life cycle. So it's a big challenge.